Tonight on SIP episode 145, we are discussing fermentation and the dozens upon dozens of decisions that you can make in this very important process of winemaking. And we're doing it with two mad scientists, husband and wife, James and Lorenza of Accenti Wines. SIP episode 145. Ladies and gentlemen, this isn't Romper Room from the 70s. This is Cellar Angels. This is actually SIP episode 145. My name is Martin Cody, co-founder of Cellar Angels, and we are your direct-to-consumer wine access for all things Napa and Sonoma, the best limited production wineries coming out of that region right now. And tonight we've got some amazing guests this evening. I have it on very good confidence and validation. Finally, Carmelo Anthony, Selma Hayek, confirmed will not be on this evening's broadcast. So 145 episodes in, they still are ignoring all calls to the contrary of having be on the show. But we do have a good show for you this evening. And we've got some old friends coming on. But before we get to them, I do want to let you know that Monday's pop quiz. What is co-fermentation in winemaking? There was quite a few answers, but the correct answer was answer B, two or more varieties. And one Sandy O, and I don't know if Sandy O is on this evening. I don't see Sandy O. Someone has to let me know. I see Alyssa, I see Angie, I see Dahlia. She is? Yeah. All right, Sandy's going to be in the comment line going, no, I'm here. I'd see she is in the comment line. Beautiful. Sandy, congratulations. You will have 100 loyalty points deposited in your account. Jan J, you were second. Brent H, you were third. These are all within minutes of each other, ladies and gentlemen. Alyssa M, you were fourth. Jim B did not represent this evening. There's Doug. Good to see Doug. Ivy, hello. There's Jim B. There's Marilyn. Moira, very nice to see you again. Sharon, nice to see you. All right, tonight we are talking about fermentation methods, and this is going to be more of a geeky episode for us this evening, but it's kind of get into the weeds because this is extremely important. It's very timely because harvest for most folks is done. I do see some stragglers out there pulling in some late fruit this week, but for the most part, finally, it's a later harvest. I mean, we're in November. Out loud, that the harvest is still going on, but fermentation is going to be happening in short order very soon. So we're going to be talking about co-fermentation, and we've got what's referred to as a greasy this evening because we're opening up 3 bottles of wine. So I want to bring in this evening's guest to talk about these wines, and we are thrilled to have back on the program, ladies and gentlemen, James and Lorenza Allen to talk about fermentation methods. So give it up.
Hey. Well,
I told you the crowd goes wild. All 2 of us that you can hear. Kent in Ohio, nice to see you. All right, so let's just revisit a few things and orient the audience to who the 2 of you are. So who wants to take a stab? Actually, we'll do ladies first. Lorenza, tell us about Accenti. And how let's talk your wine journey first, because it's a little bit different than James's, but tell me a little bit about how you got into wine.
Okay. I got into wine right out of high school because I studied agriculture. That was my bachelor degree. And the university where I was in Italy had a program for winemaking and viticulture. So I did my 3-year bachelor degree, very focused on that. And then after that, I found out of a master's degree, again, in winemaking and viticulture, which was in France for the first year. And then the second year, we were able to choose, and I went to Portugal. And in France, that's where I met James, and we became very good friends. And after that, I traveled the world for a little bit, like you do, doing harvest North and South Hemisphere, spent a bunch of time in Australia. And then 4 or 5 years ago, I landed in California and reunited with James, and we started making wine together. And that's how Accenti was born.
All right. So what I find interesting is you literally just gave about 25 years of history, and it looks like you're a shade over 23. So did you leave high school at the age of 4 or something? I mean, how did this happen?
Thank you. No. No, I've done everything in regular timing.
That's impressive. And now, James, you had a little bit of different route into wine. Tell me a little, or tell us about how you got into wine and your background, because it didn't actually start in wine.
No, I would say probably plant sciences like botany and horticulture were my first kind of interest in high school. I worked in the Missouri Botanical Garden where I grew up. I didn't grow up in the botanical garden though. I was slightly outside of the garden. And then I was home brewing beer with friends because it was easier than playing Hey Mister to get a 6-pack. So it was really fascinating. I was lucky to know a guy who worked at a brewing store, and we made a lot of fun beer. And fermentation was kind of exciting that way.
And the kids have it so easy these days because they don't have to play Hey Mister. It's a game I'm quite familiar with, oddly enough. I forgot all about that game. And I have older brothers and sisters. But yeah, you used to hang out at stores that might have sold packaged goods and did say, Hey, Mister. That's a haunting memory that you just resurfaced. It was buried, James. Thank you for that.
I guess, it teaches you valuable skills, like asking people to do things they don't want to do. Anyway,
it's a great point.
It was, I was actually very lucky. When I talk with a lot of other people in this industry, they oftentimes find wine later. I was lucky to find wine just a little bit after Lorenza, and it was just, I was started out at Colorado State with horticulture, and then luckily they started a wine program, and I got into it first thing. I left to go do an internship in California, and I was hooked immediately. So I actually didn't go straight to a master's program after. I went around the world and did a lot of internships. Actually lived in New York City and worked in an urban winery for a while. And then eventually I ran into a South African guy who was about to go to this program in France, the same one Lorenza mentioned. And it sounded like Winemaker summer camp. And and I also just wanted to learn a lot more. So it was great opportunity.
So it's interesting because it sounds like, if I'm listening to you and reading the tea leaves, that you knew very early on that you wanted to be in wine as a career.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was lucky to have some guidance, not specifically to that career from family, but they basically said, I think my grandpa mentioned a lot, like, do what will get you the life you want, but also that will keep you learning. And I think that has been a really good guiding light throughout all of this. It's like, what am I interested in? What am I going to keep learning? What job or profession will I keep learning in? And then also what's going to help me get where I want to be? And wine is so good for traveling around. I mean, you basically get paid, not very well, but for, overtime and stuff for 3 months while you work harvest. And it's a good way to get into countries you wouldn't normally live in. And 3 months is a nice amount of time to get to know a country like Australia or New Zealand. So it's just a really fun lifestyle to live in your 20s, and you happen to accidentally learn things along the way. So
no, that's incredible. And you talked about the program that you two met at in France. So Lorenzo, what was that program? And then as a follow-up, what was your absolute first impression of James?
That's a funny one. I actually remember when I met James, I thought he was very friendly, and I really liked him, and we became friends pretty fast. The program was an interesting one because the first year we were all together in Montpellier in the south of France, and we were around 30 students from 22 different nationalities. And we had professors coming from basically every country, maybe every university that is renowned for winemaking. So it was very instructive, but also I think being exposed to so many different cultures and so many different backgrounds really brought way more than just an enology class to the table. And tasting wine, not only during class, but obviously outside of hours with our classmates, with so many people having a different perspective of what wine should taste like or which varieties are the most important. It was extremely enriching, and I would do it again, absolutely.
It's amazing how when you can bring people together of incredibly different backgrounds, different experiences, different cultures, different upbringings. And when you put them together, you just articulated it beautifully. It's a much more enriching experience. Probably a lesson in there somewhere for all of society to be thinking about right now, because that is, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts type of thing. And that those types of experiences are amazing. So you leave that program. Did you guys say goodbye to each other and, see you later, fun semester, or what happened, James?
Yeah, that's basically it. She went to Portugal. I went to Germany for the second year. There was no fling or romance at all. We were just buddies. And I think she actually visited Germany while I was there one time. So we were still in touch. Facebook was actually still used a lot more by people back then. So we were a little bit more in touch and had it was a casual acquaintance situation. And I think at some point I had probably mentioned, like, you should check out Australia. It's a great place to go for at least the harvest, to check it out and see what the industry is about there. And I think we stayed in touch loosely over the years and luckily had some mutual friends, but it was I think we basically had we went dark for a while there, but then a friend of ours who was actually an Indian winemaker, he was like making the best Cabernet in India. He was getting married, and he was actually my roommate in Germany, and we went to his wedding and kind of reunited there.
Super cool. And fast forward, and I want to know when you got to the United States, specifically California. What year?
2019.
Okay, so not that long ago.
No.
And this release that we're going to be drinking tonight, is this the third vintage or fourth vintage?
Fourth, right?
Yeah, third and fourth.
Yeah.
Third or fourth?
Third and
fourth. Oh, third and fourth. That's right. We've got two. That's right.
21 in there, yeah.
So you come to California, and you now are together winemakers. And I'm curious why you decided on probably the most expensive areas in the world to produce wine and buy grapes and source. And what was the thought-making process when you guys sat down and said, what do you want to do? What do I want to do? Walk us through kind of that conversation, if it ever happened.
We still haven't. Her dad's a business owner in Italy, and he's like, when are you going to make a business plan? We've never had a business plan because it's a tiny business. It has to be dynamic, and it's what nature gives us. It's what luck gives us. And in the case of the beginning of the brand, it was luck. We didn't pay for grapes. It started with free Napa Valley Cabernet. And the only caveat was that we had to farm it, which is super easy, as everyone knows. It's really, farming is probably one of the easiest things you can do. So
free meaning we don't pay ourselves for the labor.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, I'm very familiar with that business plan.
Yeah.
You don't even need a write-up for that. You just don't pay yourself. It's a blast.
Right. Yeah, we don't do a 1099 or anything.
So you got free Napa Valley Cabernet.
Yeah, it was like a word of mouth situation. It was a friend of a friend who had this vineyard on top of a mountain and was looking for someone to take care of it. And so James actually started a few months before I arrived in the country. And I joined basically during the
2019 vintage.
Yeah, so you started in 2018.
Yeah, so I lifted it off the ground a little bit for 1 year before she arrived.
Yeah. But then from that, word of mouth, other people started asking us if we were interested in their vineyards. And it's all, when it comes to the Cabernet, it's all small backyard vineyards of people that live in Napa. Therefore, they want to have a vineyard, but don't actually know what to do with it. And the lot is usually too small for real bigger wineries to take care of it. And so we farm it ourselves, get the grapes for free, and give some wine back to the owners.
And so is that essentially the agreement with all the vineyards you farm now to a greater extent, or does anybody pay you?
Oh, the vineyards that we farm, yes. So actually originally, the Escher vineyard, which is the first vineyard, the one that you've been to, and some of the other angels here, we did get paid to farm that because that was a beast. Right. Like walking up and down the rows is, it'll wind you just walking with no equipment. So that was a different arrangement, but in general, it was like, I think the key is that anytime we walk into one of these arrangements, we say no money exchange. That's better for everybody. No one's feelings get hurt. Anyone can walk away at any time, and hopefully they don't do it in the middle of harvest as we, after we farmed it the whole year. But everything's been good so far. And the best part about having a couple of these vineyards, I mean, at this point, it's usually 3, but sometimes there's a bonus vineyard every once in a while. But
right.
we decided to make we used to make single vineyard wines. We decided to make a single wine called 3 Gardens so that we could actually have like a commercially viable product. But also when we tried blending them together and actually co-fermenting these vineyards and some of these, there's a little peppering of Merlot here and there, or Cabernet Franc, and actually co-fermenting them together tastes really, really good. And everything's it's greater than the sum of its parts.
Interesting. And folks, there's 3 bottles that will be open tonight. And I want to let you know how many of the folks actually, for those of you that are new, have this in their hands, like James and Lorenza. It's because they went to the Cellar Angels website and they bought a sip kit. Now, this is the 145th episode of SIP. There are 5 more sips remaining, only 5. So the sip kit, as a result of that, is going to have fewer bottles in it. So there's 1 mystery bottle that's in it right now. But then there's a late harvest, there's a Degadillo and a Noble. And longtime Angels know the name Degadillo and Noble is gold. So definitely, if you are interested in meeting these individuals in the coming weeks, you are going to want to purchase the sip kit. Or obviously, there's there's only 2 of these kits left from Stagecoach, from Angelo Cellars. But we have the Accenti. You aren't going to find wines this compelling, this valuable, underneath $30 with the story behind it, like you're going to learn this evening, anywhere in wine, quite honestly. So I definitely think you should go to the website, look at the Verdejo and these bottles from Accenti that we're going to break into right now. And what should the first bottle be, Lorenza, that people are opening?
The Verdelho.
All 3, or which one? The 20.
Good point.
That's a very good point.
We call it the classic.
The Classic Verdelho.
So it's
Okay,
the one with
perfect.
the waves on it. That's it.
And what about the Red Herring? Tell me about that one. Should that be open pre-pour, or
I think
what's your recommendation?
If you want to just open it, open them now, especially the Red Herring, so it has like a second just to breathe.
I would just suggest opening all of them.
Yeah.
They're all designed. I mean, honestly, we keep these open. Sometimes we have 4 or 5 bottles open at a time, and we can drink through one of these in a week, and it still tastes good. So we'll talk more about why that is, but that's they've got legs. So
Excellent. Well, I'm actually going to launch 1 poll question because it will segue into a conversation later on. So for those of you that are new, we do poll questions. When you register for SIP, it should have asked you for a credit card, because that is your ante, and that rolls over. There's money that can be won each week, but we'll explain the rules a little bit later on. So this is a wine-related question. Where was vermouth invented? Toronto, Turin, Italy, Tuscany, Trapani, Sicily. And you can hum the Jeopardy music if you like. Vermouth, I don't even know if we have vermouth in our house, because we like our martinis very, very dry. We might just wave the vermouth bottle by it, but so I think we do have some. All right, I'm going to give this 5, 4, 3. No Canadians here. You're going to be surprised at this one. 2, 1. All right, I have to probably end these polls earlier, because even though we have Angels in our names, I can't be 100% certain smartphones were not utilized in the answer. It is the honor system. So tell us, James and Lorenza, where was vermouth invented?
It was invented in my hometown in Turin, Italy.
And what else is Turin famous for?
Lorenza.
Good answer.
Thank you. For Fiat.
And Lavazza.
For what's that?
The car field, like the 500.
The
Oh, okay.
Fiat
I did.
cars, Lavazza coffee.
Ah,
My
that's
favorite
right. I
thing
know
about
that
Torino,
coffee.
though, and the Shroud of Turin, which is
Thank you. That's what I thought. I'm like, do I have the wrong Turin? That's and I wouldn't put it past me. I'm like, oh, I'm spelling it wrong, aren't I?
for
So
all you Hindus out there, the Shroud of Turin is in Torino.
that's incredible. So this was your hometown, Lorenzo?
Yeah, born and raised.
And when did you leave?
Right before going to France, so when I was 24. But I still go
Oh,
there
wow.
6 months a year.
Sometimes she
So
lives.
if any of us are going to Italy in turn, can we stop by your house?
Sure, my mom will gladly say hi to all of you. She might have
I
a
so
bottle.
want to take a selfie with your mom and send it to you.
That would be shocking, but impressive.
That's awesome. And so now why, and tell folks why I'm asking about vermouth.
Because we made a vermouth for the first time very recently, this harvest. We made our first vermouth. This was a project that we started thinking about well over a year ago, maybe longer.
I think it's worth contextualizing a little bit that vermouth has had a massive comeback, not just as like a hip drink, but as an artisanal drink, because it's like all the fun of making wine, but also making a cocktail, because and like knowing nature and knowing botany and having like a connection to the different plants of a region. So there's a lot of really cool things about vermouth that that have really drawn me to it since I've gotten to know her hometown. And also, yeah, I mean, tasting it is like tasting a good vermouth versus just your average martini and Rossi is an experience. It's really nice.
Well, see, I can't tell you how much I'm looking forward to this because I did not know there was any other vermouth besides martini and Rossi.
There are lots of vermouth.
I
Yeah.
think the original was actually Carpano. So it's also
Okay.
for sure, but that's the kind of like craft fancy one that like nice, really nice bars have.
And I'd love to hear from Sipsters how many people have had vermouth drinks not related to martinis, because I spent quite a bit of time on the working side of a bar, and the martini, Rossi, sweet and dry vermouth were all that we ever had.
Yeah.
So I didn't know it was a specialty cocktail thing. But I did, in researching for this episode this evening, to your point, James, there are a lot of folks of Italian background making wine that say we need more vermouth in wine country. It's an unbelievable wine, or grape rather, to produce, and it makes fantastic wine. So I think you're ahead of the curve on this one.
I hope so. And you know, the best part about it is it doesn't go bad too fast. So if we make too much, it's still going to be great when people eventually decide to try it. And it's and we'll probably drink it all ourselves well before then, because it's just too damn good.
You know that I can't understand why you don't have a business model. We don't pay ourselves and we drink all of the product.
Yeah.
Who wouldn't want to finance that? All right. So tell me about the 2021 Verdejo.
This is the first vintage we made of Verdelho, and the reason this is a different vintage than the other two is because it's tasting really, really delicious right now, and we wanted to make sure that you tasted it with not as a super young Sauvignon Blanc style wine, but as a it's just so layered but so precise. It's kind of, anyway. Basically, all three of these wines are from one vineyard, and that vineyard is in Contra Costa County, which is where some really nice historic vines are, just east of San Francisco. And it's grown on sandy soils. It was planted by a guy who's like third generation on that farm. His dad has like chestnut trees next door. He's like still farming at 90 something.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. And his name is Tom Morgan. He's a true farmer, and he knows a bunch of Portuguese immigrants. I guess he used to drink port with them or something, but he got some clones from them that they had brought, some cuttings that they brought. They call them suitcase clones that they brought from the island of Madeira, where they were from. And
hey,
so
don't steal my quiz thunder. There's a couple island questions later on.
Oh, okay. I'm not going to say any
good.
more information. I'll just kind of speak in generalities.
Well, you mentioned the vineyard being in Contra Costa County, and you're up in the Napa Sonoma region, and this is east of Walnut Creek. So this is a ways from a standpoint of how did you get in touch with this vineyard, or did they hear that there's people that are willing to farm for free and they called you?
We don't farm for free all of our vineyards. That would be impossible. We only farm our Cabernet. So the other grapes that we make wine from, we collaborate with like-minded growers around Northern California. So everything, all the Cabernet from Napa, it's us from the beginning to the end. And then we make also, again, the Verdelho from Contra Costa, otherwise from Sonoma and Mendocino.
Yeah.
And how did you, I mean, I think the last episode we talked a little bit about, and when we were in person with you, kind of your passion for regenerative farming. And so now that is actually a unique aspect with regards to winemakers that we have on. Normally they're making wine in already pristine vineyards and stuff like that, but you're actually starting from scratch on perhaps neglected vineyards and ones that haven't been tended to in a manner that is fitting of producing great vines. So where did that passion for regenerative farming come from? And Lorenza, I'll start with you first.
I think that comes from our background. That's what we studied. And I think for both of us, viticulture was one of the most interesting points in our career, because we get to work in wineries. That's probably where we land more easily. But the viticulture side is where everything starts, and the connection to the vineyard is something that maybe not as much in the States, but especially in Europe, is something really felt. Good wine comes from a good vineyard. That's where everything starts. Yeah, I wrote both of my thesis on viticulture, so it was actually interesting to do this firsthand and to use what we learned about how to manage the environment around the vines, nurture the soil, and see the results at the end.
And I think it's really important to define that it's regenerative viticulture or agriculture in general is not necessarily only, it actually should definitely not just be done on places that are already in disrepair or in trouble. Some, like maybe it's, lots of chemicals were used or something. It's literally, it's a method that can be used in any agricultural situation. And it's really more about maintaining what you have. Yes, you will make things better through these processes, but I think it's really key that, it's basically organic is just the starting point, and then everything past that is just a full kind of comprehensive ecosystem view of the vineyard, where the idea of regenerative is like necessary even with a basic farm, because you're always taking something out of a farm.
It's a good point.
Something, then you're taking something away. So the regeneration is something that's required of literally every system that does that.
And Jim B, I've got your question, but a follow-up to that, to both of you, is when you start farming a vineyard in this manner and in this style, how many vintages does it take for you to see the difference in the technique that you're imparting in this type of farming versus what the fruit was prior?
I think every year we see some improvement. And now,
so you'll notice it the next vintage based upon, right away. It's not like you have to wait 4 or 5 vintages to see the impact of this.
It depends on what you mean with seeing the impact, because we notice how certain things can improve or did improve, but you don't have your perfect ideal vintage a season after. That takes a long time and a lot of work. But every year there is a little bit of
That's a good point. It's every year there's incremental change in the right direction. And Jim B asked a question that I was going to get to, the Verdejo grape. Verdelho, sorry. I always say Verdejo. See, this is a hard grape for me. It's not a household name. So why this grape? And maybe you want to make it a household name. Tell us the story about wanting to harvest this and co-ferment 3 of them. So who lost a bet?
But first I think you should say the grape name, because you are the best at saying it. And because it's kind of between the 2 that you said, but there's an easy way to remember it that I have figured out over time.
For the love of God, tell me.
Go for it.
And again, this comes with an Italian pronunciation, not a Portuguese one.
But she speaks in Portuguese, so.
It's Verdelho. So the LH is like a Y sound, compared to the Spanish variety, Verdejo with a J. And
All
they're
right, let me hear
pretty different, right?
let me hear James say it, because I will never be able to get as close to what you just said.
Verdelho.
All right, I'm liking both of you less and less
No,
right now.
the easy way to do it is like Verdelho every dayo.
Verdelho Verdelho.
Perfect.
Oh my God, I'm like 4% Italian already.
That was really good.
Anybody else close to that? I like Ivy. Ivy's giving it to us phonetically. Verdelho. I guess that works. So, but I heard Lorenza with an L in there.
Verdelho.
Verdelho.
It's
Nope.
just
Look,
say it like a bar.
James is like, nope, that's not even close, Martin.
No, because the problem is if you think about it as it's spelled, because we don't see those phonetics the same way, and so just think about it like create a Y where you see the L, where you see the
I like that.
LH. Put a Y there.
Verdelho.
Yeah.
All right. So, given how easy it is to pronounce, why produce this wine? Tell us that story.
That's masochistic, isn't it?
Yeah, because we don't do focus group where we decide names like Accenti. We love it, but then we found out how many people struggle with the pronunciation, but it's fine. We just go with it. So we found the Verdelho because we were already working with the grower. We started with Sauvignon Blanc at the very beginning, and we made some good wine. We loved the Sauvignon Blanc was a hit, but then when we found out that he was growing Verdelho, that was like an easy choice for us because I've done the second year of my master in Portugal. I lived there for over a year. It's a Portuguese variety, and for me, it was an immediate connection.
We try to link the wines we make to our actual experiences at the kind of gold standards of those wines, the source of those wines. And yeah, I mean, it was I don't know, it was kind of an obvious, like we both got really excited immediately. Plus, it's an organic vineyard, and we knew it was being farmed well. So it's just like, it's such a rare find.
Yeah.
No, and I can actually feel that excitement, and I can only empathize in how fun that must have been for both of you. When you taste wines like this or from vineyards like that, does it immediately transport you back to the experiences that you had to learning about this grape or this variety?
That's kind of the whole idea, I think. I think that's the whole, that is like, I mean, the only reason that anyone should pay more than what, you know, a $10 or $15 bottle of wine costs, like, cause you can get quality wine at an inexpensive price, but the all added value there is the experience. And maybe it's the experience you remember of that restaurant where you had the wine or that trip you took, but everything is, I mean, wine has so much story in the bottle, and it's such a beautiful thing about, so basically that's the whole concept of Accenti that you just hit on there. I think that's what we're trying to do with every wine. And for us, it becomes the story of the harvest as well, but it's harder to share that with people. So I think the origins of these wines and the vineyards, but also the countries they're from and our experiences in those countries is a pretty fun thing to convey with the wines.
With Accenti means accent in Italian, and what we wanted to convey is that every wine has an accent based on the grape variety, but also where it's grown and who farms it. You know, there are different traditions and different techniques, and that's what we want to convey: a wine that has personality and has a story to tell.
I love it. And we just got done, like I said, 99% of the folks are now done with harvest. So, James, what happens next in the winemaking process? And I want to get to fermentation because that's obviously what tonight's episode is. So, you guys just got done with harvesting. So, tell people what you did, what you're doing now, and we'll talk more about this fermentation.
I think this was probably our best and also most interesting. And yeah, that's the most interesting harvest yet. And I would say that mostly because the weather was very just amazing, cool. There was water, so our dry farming was a lot less stressful. And the cool weather allowed us to basically perfect the harvest timing, which is probably one of the top 3 decisions a winemaker has to get perfectly. And I think that led to, well, I should also probably mention that, like, right before, yeah, the quality was all really good. We had some exciting developments in the vineyards. We're making a couple new wines because we can't help ourselves, and also bottled vermouth, and like did tinctures of all these botanicals in the middle of harvest, which, you know, because we were bored. And then And then like right before harvest, I think it was like a couple weeks before our first pick, or maybe a month before our first pick, we found out Lorenza was pregnant. So that kind of threw a gear in the works, and it made it kind of an interesting, like, hey, let's do punch downs with morning sickness.
Congratulations. You heard it here first. Lorenza is expecting child.
Labor. I mean, she's going to go into labor, but
Labor.
get labor.
That little chunk will be stomping grapes, I promise you, next year.
Maybe not next year.
Yeah.
So congratulations. That's amazing. I'm very thrilled for both of you, and can't wait to see pictures. It's very exciting. And so now, James, you guys have had a ton of free time, did a lot of botanicals, all the fruit is in. So how do you decide on fermentation? I'm still drawing a blank on when that occurs.
I'll let you take this, but I think we should talk about that, but we can at some point tie that piece, because that like when the grapes come into the winery, that's when these 3 wines were figured out. So that's kind of,
okay.
We can kind of loop back to that. I think it'll be really nice.
Yeah.
Yes.
But yeah, so I think fermentation is very much different for every wine. And I think these 3 wines are a great example of how we run the fermentation, because there are different among themselves, but also, like, for example, the Classic Verdelho, the first day that you're probably drinking right now, we divide it in different vessels and run the fermentation separately in different vessels. So we have a fraction that is in stainless steel, other that is in natural oak, other that is fermenting on the skins. And fermentation has to be tracked, and usually we go everything spontaneous fermentation. We don't inoculate with yeast. So that makes it sometimes a bit longer, maybe a couple of weeks. And then after that,
yeah, so we're just leaving the fermentation to chance, but you're kind of like leaving a pie on the windowsill for, yeast, basically. You're like, come on, this is like perfect environment for you. So eventually it happens usually.
Yeah.
So all native yeasts from that standpoint. So if I'm visualizing this, so all these bins are coming in and you separate, okay, this bin's going to go to stainless, this bin's going to go to oak, this bin, and you separate them that way and put them in these vessels, and then you wait for the fermentation to begin.
I should say, in the case of just the straight white Verdelho, that and generally white and rosé wines, those grapes would probably go to the press first.
Okay.
To get the juice away from the skins, and then
Got it.
Once you have the liquid, then you can start to kind of stash it in different places. So it usually gets pressed into a tank altogether, and then we say, okay, from this, now that we know the volume, we can say we have this many barrels, this many stainless barrels, this tank or whatever, and that usually
Perfect.
is how it goes.
Yeah.
And I totally skipped the pressing part. Thanks for bringing that up.
Kind of a key part,
But we do skip the press part as well when we do skin contact. In that case, we stomp on the grapes and leave the skins in contact with the juice for a determined time that we decide, and then press afterwards.
And are these decisions all personal decisions? Like what the winemaker wants to do? There's not a right or wrong answer here, is what I'm trying to understand.
Yeah, they're all experiments.
Yes, I think there are guidelines that if you make wine, usually you do it this way. You make a wine, you usually press it and then ferment and then change vessel. But really the beauty about winemaking is that once you understand and know your tools, you can use them as you feel more appropriate, and you can play with them and experiment.
And I think we've had like tastings where we've been able to taste different wines in different contexts, fermented in different ways, and kind of associate those to an effect that happens to the wine. And so, that's one of the benefits of working all these different wineries. You see so many different styles and methods. And so
right.
we can say, okay, Verdelho, that's like a little bit like a good Chardonnay sometimes. It has some Chardonnay aspects to the wine and the grape. And so that gives us an idea of like, well, skins are helpful with Chardonnay sometimes. Like the skins have magic in them, or like letting it sit on the lees in the barrel after the fermentation can be a powerful tool, or pressing hard or pressing light can be, those are the things that, even if it's an unknown variety, there are kind of associations you make with past experience.
That makes perfect sense, but it also produced 3 questions. Mission Control is already yelling at one in my ear. What are lees?
Yeah. Lees is just the yeast that has finished its job that settles to the bottom of a tank or a barrel.
Okay.
The sediment.
And these are all three of these bottles are the same grape, same vineyard, just fermented differently.
Yes.
Exactly.
Because this is one of those experiments that you wanted to do because you were bored.
Kind of.
Sometimes I act on Lorenza's. She daydreams about something, and I'm like, oh, we could do that right now. You know, so we've made a couple different wines that way. She's like, we need chillable red, and I'm like, that's actually possible with the things that we have in this context. So let's make it happen. And it's always it's a fun partnership in that way.
And it's you would not be the first person that we've interviewed and you know had long conversations with that has a little bit of a mad scientist type of let's experiment, let's try this, let's try that, and pretty soon you look around and you're like, wow, how did we get 23 SKUs of wine when we first set out?
You got to be careful. You got to keep it focused for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so the first one we had, the Contra Costa 2021, how was that one fermented?
So this one, the 2021 was the first year that we played with Verdelho. And so what we wanted to do was to fully understand the grape and the vineyard that we're coming from.
What works, what doesn't.
Yeah. So what we did is that we divided the beans in which the grapes arrived, and we set aside a couple that I stomped on and left in contact for a full day. I think
it was a pretty short period.
Yeah.
We were being careful.
Yes. Yeah. We're slowly incrementing the amount of hours or days of skin contact. James was a little bit conservative at the beginning. Anyways, so that was one left on the skins for, let's say, one full day, and then the rest of the grapes went into the press. And in the press, after the press, they were divided, and some of the juice went into stainless steel tank, stainless steel barrel, and neutral oak barrels. And then the day after, we pressed the skin contact portion, and that went into neutral oak as well. And
so at that point, we have everything juice, unfermented, in their barrels. And it could help for anyone who's like unfamiliar with the winemaking process. Now or later, look at the Wine Folly winemaking illustrations. You can just search like Wine Folly winemaking process, and it's by far the easiest way to understand all the crazy stuff that we're discussing. Highly, highly recommend checking it out.
Yeah, but that way we had the fermentation all started and ended spontaneously in a healthy way. We didn't have any problem. And for us, because we didn't exactly know our end goal or what the final product would look like, it was very interesting for us to the winter after harvest or even before bottling to try the different wines in different vessels plus the skin contact portion and decide like which one do we like best, which one we, how do we mix this together? And then when we blend it all together, we figured out that was our best blend.
We realized that everything works.
Yeah.
And that was it was beautiful, but it was also like, well, we thought one of these was going to be the best way to move forward, but they all worked, and it also tasted really good together. So it was like, oh,
well,
right.
that led it to do the same thing the following year. So the following year we play with the same blend basically, because the result is a wine that is fresh, easy to enjoy, like it's easy drinking, but it has some layers in it, and you can drink it without thinking about it and just having like a fresh glass of wine, or you can sit and think about the wine and it has something to say.
Well, and it's interesting because Hans, I think, said it very well when he said that you can definitely taste that they are from the same source, but each one of these is their own thing. And
good. That's a really good thing to hear. Thank you, Hans.
And the 2022 Orange Flamingo, how was that fermented?
So the following year we decided to also do the skin contact portion for itself. So some of the skin contact went into the traditional Classic Verdelho, and then we had one label only for skin contact. And that was a project that we wanted to play with. It's something that we, it's pretty common to see on the market, skin contact. We have never done it, but like Verdelho was a good one. The component that we had in the original Verdelho tasted really good. And so we decided to give it its own label. So last year,
we should also mention that when we were studying together in France, we had a beautiful day of tasting with the Georgian Wine Commission, like not the state of Georgia, but the country of Georgia. And they're like the oldest wine region in the world. And they make a lot of wines that are kind of like this, like just letting the white grapes ferment on the skins without pressing them first. And so we kind of understood the range of possibility there and made us less afraid, but also kind of intrigued.
I'm envisioning this of let's just talk about fermenting on the skins. And are you sitting there with like a watch timing things, or are you just going to go away for 3 days and come back and see what's happening?
We don't go away for 3 days, and we don't really set a watch. So in this case, we compromise and decide how many days to leave it on the skin. So I think I wanted a full week, he wanted less. So we said like 3 days to start. And we are like this current vintage with 5 days. So
are you and it's not like you guys are making 10,000 cases. Are you ever fearful that one of these experiments goes awry and you think to yourself, that was bad. That was a mistake. Now we have half our yield or half our inventory, or
that can always happen, but
that's why we went to school.
Yeah, that's very important.
Good answer. It's still got to be a little bit white knuckled though.
Yeah, I think the key to that is using our knowledge and our experience while being there. So tasting the wine, like making sure that nothing happens daily. As long as you have a closed eye, you can have, you don't need to be too much hands-on. I mean, we are hands-on.
Can I take just a second to explain why skins, like what skins are and what they have? Because I think that's kind of the key here. And
exactly.
You're talking about like what is it scary? It should be a little less scary from a microbiological and a preservation standpoint, because skins have and this is true in many fruits, like it has all the good key stuff in it. It has a lot of the flavor. In the case of reds, it has the color, and it also has the antioxidants. It's the protection for the grape. You're protecting the inside. So there's a lot going on there. And sometimes when we taste the grapes, we're like, this is so good. And the juice is good too, but the juice is kind of basic things. It's like acid and sugar and and water, but the skin has all these complex polyphenols and color. It's just a beautiful thing. And there's so much flavor there. So sometimes, and that when we get to the next one, we'll dig into that more. But I think that's the downside is that you can lose some of that freshness, some of that focus, some of that acidity. But at the best, you end up making something much more complex, much more interesting than just a basic pressed white wine.
Awesome. Before we get into the next wine, and that is very helpful, and thanks for the context, James, especially, because you're right, the skins can impart so much more nuanced layers and just unbelievable texture to it as well. I'm going to launch another poll question that has to do with Verdejo. Where is it from? Malaga, Spain, Madeira, Portugal, Pula, Croatia, the Azores Islands. And then while we're waiting for folks to answer, a question came up on making these 3 wines. Do you ever inject SO2? If so, when and why?
Oh, interesting. We never, because we're small, we have the ability to control generally the quality of the fruit. Like we're not getting giant trucks coming in, and these are always handpicked. So the fruit quality is usually very high and not compromised. So that's usually people don't add SO2 before fermentation unless there's a problem there. So we never add SO2 before fermentation. The yeast actually produces a tiny amount of SO2 on its own, so there's some protection there.
Right.
And then, so we kind of rely on that through the early, fermentation and early aging, and CO2 is a good protection as well. So just the short answer is that the Orange Flamingo and the Red Herring have no added SO2. And then we did use a little bit of SO2 at bottling for the Classic Verdelho. And that's part of the style and also part of it doesn't, as you can see, it's not hazy like the others. So there's
Right.
actually less natural, most clear white wines don't have as much natural protection as these hazier wines.
And this is probably an unfair question, but do either of you know where this grape originated from?
Yeah, Accenti.
I like it.
We bred it.
I'm not going to put you on the spot. A lot of people think it's Madeira, but it's actually the Azores Islands. It was there 200 years prior to Madeira.
I don't think I knew that.
It is off the coast of Portugal. I'm going to show you a little bit when we get to Google Earth. And speaking of Google Earth, before I go to the Red Herring, I do want to show where these nomads are farming. Two of our favorite nomads. So that would be here. And then there's a final poll question coming up that deals with the woodwind section. Just joking. Hans and Caitlin will understand that reference. There was an upheaval, or there's almost a bitter war last week, you guys, on a trivia question that involved some music geeks that aren't here this week, but don't test them on the woodwind section. So I'm going to show everyone where you guys are farming. And the first one is, I don't control the Zoom, mission control. This is James's deck, and it's a damn nice deck. So the Escher Vineyard. What do you get from here?
This is actually everything you're going to see in this slideshow are the vineyards that we farm. So all Cabernet with sprinklings of things like Merlot, Petit Verdot, Cab Franc. So this is the original vineyard. This is the one that many of you have been to. I think, Jim, you've been there.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So this is on top of a mountain overlooking Napa Valley. And on the bottom right, you might be able to zoom out a little bit, but oh, there it is. Yeah. So this is like really, it's hard to see the actual elevation, but I think it's like 1,800 feet. It's, or 1,200 feet.
Yep.
And it's kind of the core of it's the crown jewel of our vineyard.
It's an amazing, and if you stand right here in July, it's 105, just letting you know.
Yeah, the grapes can take it.
So that actually is, and I'm just hitting play on this, but this gives you an idea of, if we slide over, now you can see a little bit of the topography here on just how high this vineyard is up above the valley floor. I mean, it's up there.
Yeah, that's Napa Valley down there.
And Stanton?
Yeah, Stanton, actually, if you all know Costco, the vineyard just closer to us from that pin is owned by the Costco family. That's Senegal Estate. But yeah, this is actually one of our favorites. It's in fact, we actually just picked up another vineyard right next door to this one. We don't have to spray, like it's just incredible. There's we call it a no spray vineyard, which is extremely rare. Usually you have to at least spray sulfur to combat mildew, but this vineyard is damn near perfect. It's like a gravelly soil, kind of like Bordeaux. Old vines. It's 3 different families all next to each other, and it's kind of a contiguous vineyard here. We love
super cool. That is absolutely super cool. And you're right. These are quote unquote gentleman farmers. They would never do anything with this. So you guys are coming in and making great wine out. That's awesome.
Look how big all the vineyards around it are. I mean, it's kind of hilarious. Oh yeah.
So Rockland, obviously there's some topography there you can see.
Yeah, this is a terraced. This is our only terraced vineyard. And yeah, it's a beautiful site. It's right next to Grace Family Vineyards, which we were instantly enamored by the site, but it's also next to some vineyards that cost like $700 a bottle. So we're pretty excited to farm this.
Who's this?
I don't know. Sure.
It's not. I have to zoom out and see where I am.
I don't know who that is actually. I know a lot of the neighbors, but I'm not sure about that one.
And what do you grow it, or what do you harvest at Rockland?
That's all Cabernet, all the terraces, but then there's one row of Merlot that goes up on a hill.
All right, that's not Vineyard 29, is it? No. Okay.
It's close though. I think that's just a bit up valley, like one or 2 vineyards up.
Up now north.
Now we're
another.
in California.
Yep, another little backyard vineyard.
Yeah.
Oh, hey, Jim Bocce, near a golf course.
There you go. That
That
grass
would
should
work.
be green.
And what do you grow here?
That's 100% Cabernet.
Perfect.
That's the one that Lorenza picked herself in 2020 with a headlamp.
So this is the one in Contra Costa?
Oh, I guess we do have the vineyard on there. Yeah, this is where all three of these wines come from. So it's
And I'm going to pan out so you guys can see how far away this is from. I mean, Walnut Creek is over here. You're way south.
And where you see all the houses to the west there, all of those used to be vineyards. This was all
Really?
agriculture like 15, 20 years ago. And even like they've seen their water table go down because these new houses are taking so much water out of the system.
I can believe that. Yeah. So here you have Napa up here, Yountville. So that's quite a ways from where they are.
Yeah. But some
And I
very
know
nice historic vineyards around there.
this one looks kind of nice. Colombini.
Yeah.
This is an incredibly undervalued vineyard and region. This is Redwood Valley, and it's in Mendocino County, north of Sonoma County. And this is a third or fourth generation farmer. It's all bush vines. They're massive. You could almost zoom in and see a vine. They're so big.
So like 85 years old vines.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful vineyard.
And what do you grow here? Oh, Carignan. Hello.
100% Carignan there. The vineyard to the left is Zinfandel. So this is like an old heritage variety of California.
Love it. Yeah, that's up there. Holy cow.
Yeah, it's deep in there.
Merlot.
Yeah, this is Bedrock Vineyard is farmed by the Bedrock Winery. If you've heard of Ravenswood, it's the son of the guy who started Ravenswood, Morgan Twain Peterson. He's a master of wine, and he was very nice to offer us some Merlot back in 2020. So we've been getting that, and we have a lot of fun kind of trying to make a Bordeaux out of Sonoma Valley.
I like it. And the last one is the Secret Vineyard. Now this one you can see quite a bit of topography, which is amazing how steep this is on this hillside.
Yeah.
It's about as steep as you can plant on the Mayacamas vineyard. This is like the other side of the mountains from Napa Valley, overlooking Santa Rosa and Sonoma Valley and Russian River Valley.
So if we made the Verdelho, because I studied in Portugal, we are doing the Riesling because James studied and worked in Germany. Well, we were there for a couple of years, maybe total. And we found the vineyard quite by serendipity, I will say, and it makes one of our favorite Riesling for sure.
That's a great view, actually. If you flip that view 360, you can see the ocean, and you can see how the ocean blows a cool breeze through this kind of like a little corridor here where the houses are. And so every afternoon it gets a cool breeze, which is really key for making a fresh, vibrant Riesling.
I can turn it a quarter.
Sorry, yeah, not 360. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, you can see how it's kind of like a window to the ocean.
No, and you can see now just how wide an area your vineyards are, and we aren't even getting the one down at Contra Costa yet. So my goodness. Let me know.
If harvest is over.
Hold on one second. I'll show you where, since the Azores Islands stumped everybody, I'll show you where that is. Right here. So 200 years earlier, and here's Portugal, and obviously Madeira, where everyone thinks Verdelho is from. But these little volcanic islands apparently had it first. Not surprising that it would be on ships and then carried over to Portugal. But I've been wrong before, but this isn't from Wikipedia. This is from quite a few sources that I saw this. So, but I was shocked.
A thirsty sailor, a Portuguese sailor, and drive like going across the ocean and like, oh, sweet, some Verdelho halfway along my journey.
Okay, so now the red herring, the last one. Talk to us about the fermentation process for this.
This is probably the most interesting and experimental of all of three. So this was definitely James's idea. We've been working on a chillable red the year before, and then we made a piquette the year before. And then we had the idea, or James had the idea of doing something even more radical. So what we did is we took the juice of the original Verdelho, not the skin contact, but the one that went directly to press. At the same time, we also harvest we make a Grenache rosé. And so they come more or less at the same time. When you make a rosé, it's red grapes, but they go directly into the press. The juice goes to become a rosé, and usually the grapes, the solids, get discarded. In this case, save the solid of the press and immediately put them into the juice of Verdelho, the fresh juice. And then we fermented them as a red wine. So when you have a red wine, you have the solids or the skins in contact with the juice. The fermentation happens when the two are in contact. And we do one punch down a day to just make sure that everything is in contact with each other. And the result is like a white wine that looks red and it tastes fresh, but it has a completely different aromatic profile.
I mean, it's a white grape. All the juice in here is white. All of the liquid is from Verdelho, but the flavor and the color is from the magic that was in the skins from the Grenache rosé.
Wow. And give me a flavor, aromas flavors pairings. Like what are you going to get on this from an aroma standpoint? And we have two travel agents in the audience that are letting us know that you can get to the Azores Islands nonstop from both SFO and JFK.
Nice. Very good to know. Thank you.
Very good. Maybe we'll go get some grapes.
Some suitcase clones.
Yeah. I think so. When we first tasted this out of the barrel, even in the middle of the fermentation on the skin, it was like, whoa, this is like a bowl of like black cherries, like the best cherries you had in your life, just like sitting in a bowl, ready to eat. And then this, and when we bottled, it kind of carried through. And then what we noticed soon after bottling is that you would taste that beautiful, bright, fresh cherry note, and then it would kind of, there was a vinous quality, like a more of the Grenache, kind of like maybe a hint of white chocolate, maybe a hint of like cocoa powder, maybe even like a woodsy character, like a forest floor kind of thing. Not quite like a Pinot though. And then and then now this is actually, I haven't had this wine in a few months now, and it's definitely evolving. I'd say like the primary bright, super cherry fruit is subsiding a bit, and it's becoming more of a, almost like it reminds me a lot of Gamay, like a Beaujolais.
There you go.
Which is literally just like Gamay grapes made in a way that has less skin contact and less punch down. So I don't know. It's kind of fun. I mean, and it makes sense because Grenache and Beaujolais are pretty related.
Yeah.
Well,
and the nice thing too is, I mean, you could serve this chilled.
That's the idea.
I'm drinking it chilled right now. This has been in the fridge all day, and I think you can drink this at the same temperature as the other white wine. And I probably should have, maybe we should have communicated that more, but it's totally fine to drink this as a red, but it's really fun to drink this like when it's warm outside with some barbecue. But I also think this is a really good Thanksgiving table play where you can, I mean, imagine this with like, this is your cranberry sauce. This is,
right.
This works with everything else in the meal. It's just like, it fits that place.
And then Hans is actually commenting that it reminds them a little bit of almost a sour beer type of element, but they also had it chilled and it works wonderfully.
Great.
I can't thank you enough. Speaking of working wonderfully, and I'm looking forward to the punch down person picture next year to see how well that labor works out for you. No one's going to call DCFS, so don't worry about that. You're fine here. Everything stays here. And we were fortunate enough to visit you in that glorious vineyard, but how do others come out to the Valley and get a chance to taste with you? What do they need to do?
They can contact us directly. There are our emails on the website or on Instagram.
It's on the bottle, on the back label. Either way is going to get you to contact space.
Yeah. And then we make wine in a collective space. So it's not a fancy tasting room, but when we have guests, we just go around and show them what we do, where we do it, and then taste wines that we open, but also wines from the barrel, depending on the season.
Yeah, it's those are the best tasting experiences. Most Cellar Angels folks have headed up to here with fancy tasting rooms. We like getting our feet dirty and our hands dirty and mingling with the people that are making the wine. So those tasting room experiences like that are exactly where that happens. Is there, and I forgot to ask this, James and Lorenza, is there a kind of, on these three wines, is there a go-to pairing that you know can't miss?
I think we covered the red herring for this time of year.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I think the Verdelho, maybe, I don't know, maybe it's because I miss eating oysters, but I feel like Verdelho and oysters or Verdelho and some fresh fish would be great.
yeah,
I
that's
like
your,
it.
it's like Chardonnay for seafood.
Oh, that's actually a great way to say it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing your news this evening. That was a wonderful surprise. We're thrilled for you both. And thank you for walking us through fermentation, lees, skin contact. And I just can't believe the hundreds of decisions and tests and trial and experiments and everything that you can do. I think it would make vineyard or vintage consistency challenging with all of the different decisions that you have. But it is kind of fun, and your price point is unbelievable. So this is absolutely everyday drinking wine that people can now share your story with, and that's what we want the Angels to do. So thank you both for spending some time with us this evening.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, thank
I'm
you.
really happy to share this with you.
You are very welcome. Hopefully there's no more morning sickness and that the two of you get some sleep. And thank you for the pronunciation. Looking forward to meeting your mom when we're in Italy and sending pictures. Next week, Sipsters, we have Wine Caves with Doug Danilak from Knightsbridge. So they have just built and completed a brand new cave, which took 15 years to complete. But we're going to be walking through some of the aspects that brings to winemaking, certainly in aging. All of you have a wonderful weekend. Be good to one another, raise a glass, cherish all the things that we have together, because it doesn't get much better than great wine, great people, and great food. Cheers, everyone. Thanks, Lorenza and James. You guys look great.
Thank you. Have a good weekend.
Thank you.
Bye.
Ciao.
All right. Bye-bye.